For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. For the 23rd straight year, the United Nations has voted to urge the U.S. to lift its blockade on Cuba. 188 countries voted in favor of the resolution and 2 countries against. The United States and Israel were the only countries to vote against the measure. 3 countries abstained. According to Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez, the blockade has cost Cuba more than $1 trillion and imposed tremendous hardships on the population.
Mr. President, distinguished permanent representative, delegates, at this difficult and special time in international relations, I must ask you to vote in favor of Draft Resolution A69L4, entitled Necessity of Ending the Economic, Commercial and Financial Blockade imposed by the United States of America against Cuba, to support the idea that the current serious problem facing humanity make it an imperative to change our way of dealing with each other in order to solve these problems, in order to preserve peace, in order to preserve human life. Thank you very much.
Bolivian President Evo Morales is in Italy today, where he offered remarks at the World Meeting of Popular Movements. The event is partly organized by the Vatican's Pontifical Council of Justice and Peace. Morales offered his thoughts on the UN's vote to lift the blockade on Cuba.
I'm convinced that the UN Security Council, or better, in Security Council, do not respect the decisions of the United Nations. Why don't the UN Security Council intervene in favor of lifting the US blockade against Cuba, for example? It's the decision, I think, of the entire world to lift the blockade against Cuba, except for 3 or 4 countries. If that's the United Nations, then the Security Council should guarantee that the world government's will is respected.
Mexican authorities on Tuesday discovered another mass grave in the southern state of Guerrero. Investigators continue to scour the area for nearly 4 dozen missing students who disappeared last month and who are feared dead. With the latest, here's our correspondent Clayton Kahn.
Today, protesters continue to take over streets and public spaces throughout Mexico, demanding the return alive of the forcibly disappeared 43 Ayotzinapa students. This comes after a day of the discovery of at least 1 new clandestine grave in the town of Cocula, Guerrero, which is located near the town of Iguala, where the students were disappeared by municipal police on the night of September 26. Several municipal police in that town have been detained for their connection to the case. The grave was reportedly found in a garbage dump outside of the town, and many are speculating that the remains of the missing students may be found there. This news comes after the announcement by Mexico's Attorney General Murillo Caram that 4 new suspects connected to the organized crime group Guerreros Unidos have been detained, 2 of which are reported to have been directly involved in the disappearance of the students. This is Clayton Kahn reporting for Telesur in Mexico City.
And thanks to Clayton for his ongoing coverage in this very disturbing story. Tuesday, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia presented the 4th point of a 10-point proposal. The proposal addresses rights of the victims of Colombia's ongoing conflict.
The responsibility of the state must be defined considering multiple areas and taking into account the implementation of economic models and the economic measures and actions that accentuate the socioeconomic inequality and stimulate the concentration of wealth and property. They favor the owner of larger states, the economic groups, and transnational corporate powers.
Around the world, Iraqi Peshmerga fighters left on Tuesday for the Syrian town of Kobani to help fellow Kurds in their battle against Islamic State militants. That's according to a senior Kurdish official. The Iraqi Kurdish region's parliament voted last week to deploy some Peshmerga forces to Syria, although a government spokesman later said they would not engage in direct combat in Kobani, but provide artillery support. Meanwhile, the U.S. Central Command says it staged 4 airstrikes on the Islamic militants in Syria on Tuesday. According to officials, at least 18 workers have been trapped underground after an accident at a coal mine in southern Turkey. Local media report that the collapse occurred after water that had been built up inside the mine entered the area where the workers were located. Turkey suffered one of the worst mining disasters in its history earlier this year when a fire killed 301 workers at a mine in Soma. And we go to Palestine now, where the people of Gaza continue to struggle with the lack of medical supplies due to the siege imposed by Israel. Here's our correspondent Noor Harazin.
Gaza has been under Israeli siege for 8 years now. Israel originally imposed the siege after Palestinian resistance groups imprisoned Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit in 2006. Even though Shalit was released 3 years ago, the illegal siege continues to bite down hard on Gaza's vulnerability, especially after Egyptian military crackdowns on smuggling tunnels between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. Dr. Shadi Moghrebi is health specialist for premature babies at Al-Shifa Hospital.
For the past years, we have been warning of the effects of the siege and situation here in Gaza's hospitals, and now it has gone from bad to worse. As the last war has drained all our abilities, our medicine and medical supplies, our fuel and clean water, and the amount of medical aid convoys was small this time. What was brought didn't make the hospital operate better.
Other doctors in Gaza said that the fuel shortage is impacting the service they offer, as hours of electricity supply have dramatically dropped. The lives of kidney patients needing standard treatments in the intensive care units and premature babies are on the line. Meanwhile, some children have died as a result of the eventual failure of hospital backup generators that also eventually run out of fuel, despite repeated warnings from the Ministry of Health in Gaza of an ever-worsening health crisis affecting such patients. The fuel shortage is still yet to be sufficiently relieved. Noor Harazin, Telesu TV, Gaza.
And thanks to Noor, this week Venezuela celebrates its 9th year as an illiteracy-free country. But what does it mean to be one of the people who has benefited from the country's literacy campaign known as Mission Robinson? Our correspondent Rachel Boothroyd brings us the story behind the figures.
9 years ago this week, the United Nations officially declared Venezuela an illiteracy-free 9 years ago this week, the United Nations officially declared Venezuela an illiteracy-free country. It's an achievement which can be put down to the Venezuelan literacy campaign known as Mission Robinson, which has helped over 2 million people learn how to read and write.
Here you teach people starting from zero, showing them the letters to read, to write, and you teach them to be well-rounded people too.
Launched in 2003 with the help of Cuba, the mission saw thousands of volunteer students and teachers deployed across the country, responding to the government's call to make Venezuela an illiteracy-free zone. A huge act of solidarity, not just between two countries, but also between Venezuelan citizens. It's an effort which has resulted in a literacy rate which stands at 98.7% today.
I wanted to learn to read, and now I more or less know how, thanks to this mission. Thank God I've learned a lot, because before I didn't know anything. The only thing I knew was how to sign my name.
The mission has seen vulnerable groups such as citizens with disabilities and indigenous communities included in the country's educational system for the very first time. For Janet Rodriguez Guerrera, a member of the cultural collective and magazine known as La Mancha, the impact on citizens' lives has been huge.
Older people, beautiful older women, sent us their articles through their friends, texts about what they were experiencing in their communities. We didn't just learn to read, but also to write, and now we want people to read us.
With millions of books also having been distributed free of charge across some of the poorest communities in Venezuela, the government says it's dedicated to making sure that the future citizen of Venezuela is one who reads. Rachel Boothroyd for Telesur in Caracas, Venezuela.
And thanks to Rachel, the only existing self-portrait by Italian master Leonardo da Vinci will soon make a rare appearance in a new exhibition in Turin. That's in northern Italy. The exhibition will be made up of some 80 masterpieces, which now form part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Visitors must reserve tickets. Admission will be limited to 25 people every half hour. The official emblem of the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia has been unveiled. Astronauts at the International Space Station had the honors of conducting the big reveal. And tonight we leave you with those images. For more on all of those stories we reported, you can check it out at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle.